Hi, everybody. It's Susan Hill from the Susan Blueberry Hill Show, a podcast dedicated to helping you become your best, most authentic self through ageless wisdom teachings, yoga, meditation, and connecting to our ancestral wisdom. Today, as my guest, I have a very special woman named Karen Mills-Alston, who is an agape licensed spiritual therapist and author of 10 Principles for a Life Worth Living, a guide for actively and purposefully participating in your life. Karen Mills-Alston is a daughter and granddaughter of practitioners in the New Thought Ageless wisdom tradition of spirituality. She's also literally been on her spiritual path since childhood. In her award-winning book series, 10 Principles for a Life Worth Living, she shares the rich legacy of 3 generations of women who have devoted their lives to spiritual principles and practices. After graduating from the University of Southern California with a degree in political science, Karen became a lobbyist for the city of Los Angeles. Later, lobbied for the Air Transport Association and was the regional government vice president for Alaska Airlines and Southwest Airlines. Today, Karen is an international speaker offering transformational workshops based on the teachings of Reverend Michael Bernard Beckwith and her own body of work. She has recently launched the Global Community for Transformation. Karen serves on Agape's board of trustees as the interim dean of Agape University, an instructor in Agape's practitioner student studies, and director of Agape's annual Revelation Conference, all as a volunteer. As an Agape licensed spiritual practitioner, she has a robust clientele that enthusiastically studies and practices the teachings found in 10 Principles for a Life Worth Living. Designated a master teacher by Michael Bernard Beckwith, he says Karen has a consistent inner groundedness that outwardly expresses as spiritual elegance. Karen is the mother of Lindsay, whom she says every day she reminds me how easy it is to love. And I love that quote. So Karen is the author of 10 Principles for a Life Worth Living, a guide for actively and purposefully participating in your life. And there's a brief quote I'd like to read about the book. Some believe that there are magical secrets, hard work, spiritual steps, and difficult life altering changes that are required to live the life you desire. In reality, she says, all it takes is your willingness and availability to show up and change old patterns and false beliefs that no longer work. This book details universal principles and practices that, when applied and used consistently, allow for transformation and the creation of the life you really want to live. Beautiful. Welcome, Karen Mills-Alston.
Thank you, Susan.
It's so wonderful to have you here.
It's good to be here. Thank you.
You're just such a wonderful, bright, energetic soul, and you come from Agape, and I'd really like you to talk more about Agape International Spiritual Center in Beverly Hills.
Yes,
California.
yes.
And they relocated since I was there. Interestingly enough, I read your book, and you talked a lot about in the beginning, the very beginning section, that you had the house, you had the career, you had the beautiful family, but something was missing from your life, and you felt like an emptiness. Those are my words, but like something was missing. And so you kind of found your way to Agape International Spiritual Center. And I want you to tell the audience, what did you find that was missing when you got there? And please talk more about Agape and the really special place that it is, because I think most people listening don't know what it is.
Yes, yes. Well, Agape is a non-denominational place where a lot of people gather. I would love to have had our principle statement, our the purpose statement. But we really are here. Agape believes that we're here to develop our gifts and talents and become a beneficial presence on the planet, and through principles and practices. So it was so interesting. One Saturday morning, I was outside washing my car, and I saw this man begin to walk by me. And I live in a very wonderful, eclectic neighborhood, and we all speak, and we're very loving and kind to each other. And at that point, I knew about Reverend Michael, but I had never met him. And as it turned out, the man who was approaching me and I was getting ready to say hello to was Reverend Michael. And yes, he was out walking his dog, and he invited me and my husband and my daughter to come to Agape. And I grew up in Founders Church of Religious Science, which is the church that was started by Ernest Holmes, the man who wrote the textbook of religious science. My grandmother went there, my mother attended there, my father, our whole family attended there. And after Ernest Holmes passed, William Hornaday took on the church, and and then after he passed, I grew up in that church. After he passed, I began looking for a home. I wanted to be able to go to a center and fellowship with people. And my husband and my daughter and I had gone to a few centers. And at that point, when I was outside washing my car, meeting Reverend Michael, we had not attended any kind of a service for probably a year. And this was the first Sunday in January 2003, and I decided that the three of us were going to attend Agape. So that Sunday we went. And I have to tell you, Agape does this thing where Reverend Michael welcomes everybody. I bet you've experienced that, Susan. You're there for the very first time, and it's a showing of love. So he asks everybody in the audience to outstretch our hands, and then he says, "Welcome to Agape." And then he may say, "We're glad you're here. You are a unique, individualized expression of the one. We love you. We appreciate you. We thank God for you. Welcome to Agape." When I heard those words, it was as if I had come home. And when we talk about coming home, we're not talking about a physical location. It was a place in my heart that I carry with me all the time. So I was being welcomed to the real me, the love, the joy, the peace, the happiness, the creativity, all of that stuff. And it resonated with me so deeply, so powerfully. And at that time, at that particular service, Reverend Michael gave this message about living my life, because I knew he was speaking specifically to me, living my life on purpose. And I thought, oh my God, that's exactly what I wanted to hear. I needed to find a way so that I felt that I was completely fulfilled. So I immediately got into service. It's volunteer work. That's what we call it at Agape. So I started feeding the homeless on Saturdays in Santa Monica, California. I went every single Saturday for 2.5 years. That was part of my service. I also started taking classes. And as it turned out, I took a class and then another class and then another class. And then before I knew it, I had a choice if I wanted to start taking the classes to become a practitioner. And that was it. I was licensed in 2007. And so for the last 13 years, I've been practicing the presence of God, practicing the presence of joy, of love, all of that good stuff.
Well, that was pretty fast. You went right through, got
Yes.
to Agape, and then all of a sudden you just took class after class, and then you became an
Yes.
Agape licensed spiritual therapist.
Yes.
Really amazing. Well, I have to, in your book, you talk about not comparing yourself to other people, but for the
Yes.
sake of contrast, I'm going to dare to compare myself to you.
Okay.
And I'm going to say, I have not had the same experience. I did not go right through. In fact, I'm not an agape licensed practitioner, but I've taken many classes.
Yes.
And so that's really interesting. I'm wondering, for you, what was your process for doing that? Just seemed natural for you, or was there some sort of drive or inner call for you or it just seemed like the next progressive step to take? Or
Yeah. So as a practitioner, we talk about having a calling because practitioners have a spiritual practice. So every day, several times a day, I meditate and I pray. It's just what I do. I see clients. I am in service to not only to agape, but to the community, to the global community. So there was a calling for me to be of high service. And, um, and so that's what happened. I mean, I found myself really connecting very deeply because this is something that I grew up with. So, and my grandmother and my mother only took me, they were shining examples. And then they eventually, what I call, passed the baton to me so that I could become even more. And then I've passed the baton, I'm passing the baton to my daughter and to other people. And this is what we do as practitioners. We're practicing the presence so that we can become more and never less than our real selves, as Reverend Michael says.
that's beautiful. Okay, so my next question is, you talk in your book about a spiritual practitioner is someone who works to see the perfection in your client that is already there. Okay.
Yes.
And so, we're facing some really difficult times right now. A lot of upheaval, a lot of chaos.
Yes.
As we were leaving the old paradigm and moving into something different, something new, which we know the universe is progressive, so it's got to be better. But for a lot of people don't understand that. So when you have a client and their life is literally falling apart, they may be facing a very serious health challenge, a diagnosis,
Yes.
a loss like a divorce or the death of a child, maybe a devastating financial loss.
Yes.
How do you see the perfection in them? That to some people just may seem impossible. How do you do that? I'm suspecting that it has to do with your spiritual practice and your training as a practitioner. So maybe you can go into that a little bit.
Yes. So when we talk about perfection, we're talking about the perfection of the presence of the universe, of spirit. We're not talking about human perfection. So when we believe at Agape, and it's very metaphysical and very mystical, that when we see someone, we know that they have everything that they need. We are all born into this, onto this earth plane with everything that we need. But because of conditioning, because of what Don Miguel says in the Four Agreements, domestication, there are things that are piled on to us. We are told that we're not good enough. We're told we're not worthy. We're told we're not special. We're told we're told all these negative things. So what a spiritual practitioner does is to remind the person who they truly are, that the universe is friendly, that they have everything that they need, that everything is working together for their highest good, that something is birthing itself. So in the midst of chaos, chaos represents some facts that are happening, but they're not the truth. So we get to really step away from the facts. We're not, as practitioners, as spiritual beings, we're not living in the world. The world there is chaos. The world, there is disease. The world, there is all kinds of stuff. We step away from it, and we get to do that through practices. So when I work with a client, the first thing that I ask the client to do is to begin to meditate, to stop, to listen to the eternal broadcast, as Reverend Michael calls it, and get out of the mind chatter, move from the head to the heart, and become open and available. Now, we're not talking about meditating for hours. We're talking in the beginning. In my book, I talk about being still for 3 minutes in the very beginning, just 3 minutes, stopping, pulling ourselves out of the world, and then being still. So that releases us from this human it's a lockstep. It's the way that everybody walks in the world. So when we pull ourselves out of that human conditioning, we get to stop, take a breath, and just pay attention to the breath. That's where we're remembering for ourselves that no matter what the facts are, that there is a universe that is working for us, that all of our needs are met, that prosperity and lavish abundance and wholeness and perfection and wellness is who and what we are. So to be able to practice that is a beginning. It's just a beginning. And that's what we do when we sit with a client. And so when we sit with clients, we talk about, what I do is that I give them homework. So this is what I would do initially to set something up. They also can, after a session, I give them the homework, they get to practice it. So that's something that's key. I had a client one time that I began working with, and she came into the session and she was very scattered. And I said, are you meditating? And she said, oh, I've been meditating for years. And I said, are you doing it every day? And she said, no, I'm not. So this practice is very important. It's like learning to ride a bike. We also say that it's like building a muscle. So if you want something to become strong, you have to practice it moment to moment. And there's no time and space in any of this stuff. So practicing, meditating, being still is a beginning step. Ask me another question.
No, it's just, I'm getting the sense that we're talking about meditation is, like Reverend Michael talks, a tool for transformation.
Yes.
Where it's getting you to stop your mind from believing in false perceptions.
Yes.
And conditions.
Yes.
It's like taking these veils off.
Yes.
And every time you can do it, even if it's just for 3 minutes,
mm-hmm.
you're stopping yourself from that mass hypnosis.
Yes, that's what it is. We're, as human beings, we are, let me see if I can remember this. We're hypnotized, bamboozled, and we walk in lockstep. We have these patterns and false beliefs that have served us for a long time. And perhaps we reach a certain time in our life where they're no longer working. And that's where we have to develop something new so that we can allow expansion to move into our lives. It's already there. So Reverend Michael says there's a place within us that has never been hurt, harmed, or endangered. And it can just be the size of a mustard seed. So when we begin to practice this, we let go of things that no longer serve us. We empty out the temple of our body that no longer serves us. And we allow that place within us that has never been hurt, harmed, or endangered to rise up. That's the presence of God. That's the infinite invisible that we allow to expand in and through and as our lives. And we have to remember it. That's where the practice comes in. That's where meditation comes in. We're remembering that the universe is for us, that we're always maintained and sustained no matter what is going on. That's a universal law.
So when we're allowing ourselves to tap into this universal mind,
Yes.
we're opening ourselves up to miracles.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes. Yes.
it's
And
incredible.
we,
I want
and
people to understand
mhm.
that there really is a usefulness in this.
Oh,
It's not
yes.
yeah, not just this kind of like notion, or it really
Right.
is
Right.
very something that you can utilize in your life in a very
Yes.
powerful way. But
Yes.
like you're saying, consistency,
It has to be consistent.
yeah.
And then our lives change. The instant demonstration of the truth is what a miracle is. So when money comes in from unexpected places, that's a miracle. When our body is revealing the truth about itself, when we're experiencing wellness, that's a miracle. But we have to practice it. We have to allow it. And then, as human beings, we may get tired of practicing it. And when we get tired, we take a breath and we go back to it. It's like getting on a treadmill. Even when you don't feel like it, it's the practice of what are we saying to ourselves? What is our inner dialogue? If we're saying that we're unworthy, we're going to have life experiences as being unworthy. As we're saying that all of our needs are met, then that's what we get to experience in our lives. It takes practice, practice, practice.
So if we're looking at, like, say I'm somebody that is really looking for some help, and
Mm-hmm.
I've got the choice. I've got
Yes.
Karen as a licensed practitioner, or I
Mm-hmm.
can choose from a therapist or a life coach.
Mm-hmm.
How would you say working with a practitioner, a spiritual therapist?
Yes.
I mean, I know that it's better, but how is it different? Why would someone want to choose a spiritual therapist over like a life coach or a high performance coach?
Yeah.
Um, what,
Because
go ahead.
yeah, this work is not about blaming and shaming our mothers, our fathers, our sisters, our brothers. It's not saying I don't have anything in my life because I'm not educated, or um, my ex-husband took all my money. It's not about blaming. It's not about doing that. It's about healing what is going on within us and remembering these universal truths. So a practitioner, as I'm sitting with a client, I'm holding the space. I'm um, in the vastness of everything that is going on. I'm praying. I'm allowing the person, through questions that I'm getting, to remember who they truly are. Remember, we have everything that we need within us. All the tools, all the tools like prayer, meditation, light visioning, witness consciousness, all that stuff is already within us. We already know who and whose we are. We know it. The practitioner reminds us of who we are. Traditional therapists may not have that kind of practice unless they're practitioners. And it's very powerful. So when you leave a practitioner session, particularly one of mine, you're going to leave with feeling prayed up, because we pray in, we pray out, and we ask questions in between. And then there's some teaching that goes on in the session. So I might, if someone is dealing with a lack of abundance, I might give them some affirmations. I might remind them, take them back to a time when they felt abundant, and allow them to remember that time when they don't feel like they're abundant. So that becomes a practice that they're working on. They're building that muscle.
It's like a new set point. Your
That's exactly what it is.
nervous system, so that they can know that that feeling tone is
Yeah.
where they need to be in order to change
Yes,
their
yes.
outer
Because
world.
remember, yeah, and that's what practitioners do. They remind their client exactly who they are and what they have already. So the idea is that we are no longer paying attention to what people say about us who are outside of ourselves. We turn within and we get to remind ourselves whenever we want to how wonderful we are, how loving we are, that we have everything that we need, that health is who and what we are. It's all those kinds of things. So we begin to take responsibility for our lives. We begin to practice this. And you know, it's so if we don't practice it, if we don't remind ourselves, then I'll put it another way. When we remind ourselves, when we practice the presence, we're no longer stepping outside of ourselves and blaming and shaming ourselves. We're turning within, knowing that the universe is always for us, always. There's no contrast in the universe. There's only good. There's only excellence. There's only abundance. There's only joy. There's only peace. That's the presence of God. The mystic Joel Goldsmith says that the presence is too, I want to remember it. I'm not remembering it right now. But what the essence of what Joel Goldsmith says is that this presence and this power knows nothing but joy and peace and harmonizing good. That's its nature. And because it created us in its image and its nature and its likeness, that is who and what we are. We have to remember that as human beings.
And the universe cannot contradict its own nature.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right. Yeah.
Okay, I have a question for you.
Okay.
Maybe people would really like to hear this. I know I would. So you must have been experiencing some difficulties in your life. Obviously, you're a human.
Yes.
So how have you? What is the biggest hurdle or difficulty that you'd like to share with our audience here? And how have you used these spiritual principles? And maybe even something from your book that you're listing, top 10 principles in your book, which we're going to talk about more in our interview, that helped lift you out of those challenging circumstances.
Well, my husband was diagnosed with a brain tumor in 2008. In fact, it was around this time, 12 years ago, that he was diagnosed. He was a speaker and he was in Maryland getting ready to do a speech. And he felt funny, and a hospital was right across the street from him, and he insisted that they give him an MRI, and they found a mass on his brain. He came home. He insisted on having the best surgeon in the world, whose name is Keith Black. Then he operated on John. He removed the brain tumor. And this is a brain tumor that John McCain had, and Teddy Kennedy, and Johnny Cochran, and Jim Novak. I mean, it's one of these things that just springs up, and within 6 months, the person is dead. It's very, very aggressive. So,
what type of tumor is that?
It's called a glioblastoma multiforme. Mm-hmm. And so I had been a practitioner for 1 year, and I had decided that I was going to heal my husband. And if I couldn't heal him, that meant that I wasn't a good practitioner. So after that first surgery, John was great. He was almost ready to speak again. In fact, he did a little presentation at Cedars Hospital with some of the staff. It was really great. Within a month or two, he developed an infection, had to go back into the hospital for 2 or 3 months, and had to have several surgeries after that point. It left him not like the John that I knew. So, and I have to tell you, at this point, I was working for John. So he had a very robust speaking business. He was an author, spoke all over the world. And so his disease impacted us financially. Our daughter had just started Spelman College. And so there's a lot of balls in the air, a lot of balls. He could not work. He could not work at all. So this is what I learned. First of all, I learned how to love unconditionally, because I took care of John for 2.5 years, not 6 months, 2.5 years. I had support from my family, from my brother-in-law, from all kinds of people, because eventually we had insurance and everything, and it only covered a certain amount of our expenses. I have to tell you though, because I really was practicing the presence of God, because I was praying and meditating and knowing that I'm abundant, knowing that even for John, knowing that wholeness was the order of the day. We were able to, I'm still living in the house that we lived in. Lindsay completed Spelman College. She graduated. And I learned that all things are possible. I learned to get out of my comfort zone and ask people if they could loan me some money, you know? It was doing those kinds of things. And this is the other thing I learned to do. I learned to pray without an expectation for the outcome. I believe that if we're here on this individualized journey, where we are supported by the presence, that a healing for John turned out to be a healing as he transitioned to go on the other side. It wasn't a physical healing in this particular lifetime. And because of that, I was able to begin writing. I was able to heal some things that I probably would not have been able to heal if John had remained on this earth plane, because I was doing the work that John needed me to do for him. So out of all of this, I learned that all things are possible. Out of all of this, I learned that I lived in an abundant universe. My relatives told me I needed to pull my daughter from school. I needed to sell my car. I needed to sell my house. It wasn't something that I wanted to do. So through all of that, I was able to stand strong and grounded, knowing that all things are possible. So yeah, 2.5 years. And it was, and that's how I've been able to write this book. So these principles were birthed out of some of those experiences that I had with John.
Well, that's a really powerful story.
Yeah, yeah.
You mentioned at the beginning of that journey for yourself, you said, I'm not a good practitioner if I can't heal him.
Yes.
So your narrative had to kind of change through that process about that.
Yes.
And yes. I'm assuming that for you, that meant that transitioned into let go of what the outcome is going to be, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I had to. Reverend Coco told me something very important. She said that before my soul and John's soul came to this earth plane, that we made an agreement. And obviously, the agreement was that we were to come together in marriage. And he was to be my teacher up to a certain point, and then I became his teacher. Does that make sense? Um, he was my teacher, and then I took those tools that he taught me, and then I used them as him being my teacher, and then I expanded on them from there. Um, and and I also learned that we're all here at an appointed time. We have no idea how much time we have on this earth plane. We have no idea. That's why it's important to live, and it's one of my principles, to appreciate and say it out loud now. We get to appreciate one another right now. We don't wait, we don't hold back. We get to say how grateful and appreciative we are right now. We get to live our lives full out right now, because we don't know what tomorrow will bring, or even if there will be a tomorrow.
Wow. It is so powerful and it's inspiring, Karen.
Thank you, thank you.
So like now I think it's a perfect segue to go into your book and the 10 principles.
Yes.
So I have them in front of me. Would you like to read them or discuss them, or would you like me to list them? However you want to.
Well, why don't we just begin with this? Begin each day in a spirit of gratitude. I don't remember when I started using that principle, but it's something that I use every single morning. And in my book, I give a practice, but I talk about before I even open my eyes. I know that I'm awake, but before I even open my eyes in the morning, I begin giving thanks for the beating of my heart, for my bed that I'm sleeping in, for a wonderful dream that I had, for an insight. So the idea with beginning with gratitude is to begin there as opposed to beginning with a to-do list. So as human beings, we wake up in the morning and we think, oh my God, it's Monday. I have to do this, this, and that, this. It's Saturday. Oh gosh, I have to do this. Do you see how that energy just sort of, it's not great energy. So to begin with gratitude, I'm so grateful and thankful for another opportunity to wake up. I'm so grateful and thankful that I get to have some tea or a cup of coffee. I'm so grateful and thankful that I get to meditate. I'm so grateful and thankful for life itself, whatever that is. And there are mornings when I don't feel like being grateful and thankful for whatever reason. And then I still practice it. So I feel that emotion, oh, I don't feel like being grateful and thankful today. Now that doesn't happen very often. I mean, it rarely happens, but I know that it can happen. But I get to, why, Karen, aren't you grateful this morning? What's going up? And then there's an emotion that comes up, and there's something that I need to heal. Maybe there's somebody that I need to forgive. Maybe I've had a dream that has taken me off balance, and it's an opportunity for me to pray for somebody. But whatever it is, I get to release that emotion that is coming up, feel it, move through it, and then I move back into gratitude. So gratitude is it's if there is nothing to do, that's the thing that I do. That's why it's number one. That's my top practice of all these principles, to be grateful.
Power of focusing, right?
Yes.
And I wondered if you could, I've heard gratitude is an antidote for fear.
Yes. So
they're very different. I mean, almost opposing, or, just completely different paradigms of energy. Can you talk about that? Like, for those people who are watching mainstream media news
yes.
and being put into mass hysteria, it's really hard. Now they're in this sort of hypnotic trance, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
how can they use gratitude? Obviously got to be conscious, but can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes. So, we really talk about turn the internet off, turn the television off. That the media is meant to bombard us with stuff that we get to be fearful of. So let's turn it off, maybe watch it, maybe read what I've started doing is that I pull up CNN on my computer, on my phone. I read a couple of headlines, I'm done. And I might do that one or two more times during the day. So I'm not sitting in front of the television, but being bombarded with all of this negativity that creates fear. Gratitude allows me to, so when we are in the fear, we're creating more fear. So when we're thinking about fear, it just sort of it propels more fear to enter into our lives. So if that's what we want, if we want to have things to be fearful of, then watch the news. Have a conversation with someone that is in a realm of absolute fear. If we want to create more things to be grateful in our lives, that's where we practice gratitude. So gratitude begets gratitude. When we are being grateful for something, it allows the universe says, yes, 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 here's some more things for you to be grateful for. That's the difference there. So worry, doubt, and fear, that's our human existence. We really want to let that go. That's an old pattern and false belief. We don't have to be in that world. Gratitude is our divine nature. We get to be grateful. You know, Reverend Michael put this, when we pray, as you know, it's a 6-step affirmative prayer. Now, in most spiritual communities, it's a 5-step metaphysical communities. Reverend Michael, probably 14 years ago, decided it was going to be 6 steps. And we begin with gratitude. And he did it because he found that when he prays, when most of us pray, we begin with being grateful anyway. So why not begin there? I'm so grateful and thankful that I can breathe. I'm so grateful and thankful that my eyes blink. Do you know all these things that we get to be grateful and thankful? I'm grateful and thankful that my lungs are operating. I'm grateful and thankful that I can move my arms. So many things that we get to be grateful for that we don't always remember to be grateful and thankful for. So yeah, that's what we want to do. Focusing more on gratitude so that we can beget more gratitude as opposed to fear. We don't want to have fearful things in our lives. So that's the practice right there.
It's beautiful. I found that for me, I like to think of it this way. When I'm grateful, I'm focusing on what I have and what's good. And that makes me feel like I'm expanding.
Yes.
When I'm in a fearful state, I'm contracting and everything's dark and small and I don't feel good.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's the way I kind of interpret it. And if I can tune into my own sensations, I can, through the power of meditation, because that allows you to really become the witness.
Yes.
As opposed to identifying with the experience and believing it's really happening. So it all kind of ties in, but I found that for me, to be able to stop it and snap out of it and move into gratitude happens from my spiritual practice.
Yes. And you know, as you sang this, I remember this. So when we are grateful, we talk about what we want. When we're in fear, we talk about what we don't want. Oh, I don't want that to happen to me. I don't want, and as metaphysicians, we get to say, oh, I want to be more joy-filled. I want to be more giving. I want to, you see how that goes into that? So I'm grateful that I'm giving. I'm grateful that I'm joy-filled. I'm grateful. So that does create that wonderful flow. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah.
Principle number 2.
Yes. So when we talk about principle number 2, it's just listen, the word listen. So I break it down to listening to conversations that we're having with people, listening really listening to them, not thinking about what we're going to say to them after they're finished talking, but really listening to them. And there's some other things in the book that really talk to that. But this is really about listening to the still small voice, listening to the eternal broadcast, as Reverend Michael says, listening to whatever we call it, our gut, our that something, as people call it. I call it God. But there's always that thing that is speaking to us. And I believe, it's been my experience, that I get to listen deeply through meditation. So the more that I meditate, the more that I'm being still, the more that I'm stopping, that's when my intuitive nature really kicks in. So that's that principle about, we get to listen. And that listening, someone told me a couple of years ago that, so this presence is always speaking to us. As human beings, we give it a second thought. If we count 7 seconds and we've changed our mind, we're out of the realm. Our ego kicks in. So that first thought is, if we're anchoring in this intuitive nature, if we have let go of our ego, then those first thoughts that we have, that's where we get to go. So you're driving down the street and you get this hit, I call it, turn left. But you're thinking, but I always turn right here. And when you turn right, you understand why you heard that voice, that feeling tone say, turn left, because there's something that prevented you to move forward. So that's that second principle, listen, just that simple.
Well, I know when I don't listen to that voice, trouble happens.
Yes, yes, yes. So, and that's where trust comes in. So why not begin to trust it? Why not begin to say, okay, and I don't know if I have this in my book, but I was driving to Agape one day, and I was LA traffic, 4 or 5 o'clock in the evening, and I was in the far left-hand aisle lane, and I heard, get out of this lane right now, move to your right. And I did it. And within seconds, I heard boom, 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 boom. A 10, 15 car accident. Someone had stopped ahead. If I had not listened and obeyed that still small voice, my car would have been in that accident. So that's the important. We get these hits all the time. So the idea is to listen, not just listen to it. We have to also obey it.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, number 3, align
with the creative power of your word.
Yeah.
And, this really comes from Don Miguel Ruiz, his first agreement, be impeccable with your word. So the idea is, the word is creative. It has power. So what are we saying? What am I saying to myself about myself? And I've also added, what thoughts am I thinking about myself? Or say, what thoughts am I thinking about myself? And so we can expand that. What am I saying about someone else? What thoughts do I have about someone else? If at Agape we believe, I am what thou art what I am. So as I see you, Susan, I see me. I cannot afford to say something unkind or derogatory about you, because I'm speaking about myself. That's a powerful practice. So the things that are coming out of my mouth, the thoughts that are coming out of my mind are of a higher frequency, not of a lower frequency. Be in alignment with the creative power of your word. It's a powerful practice. And then when we do that, Ernest Holmes says, that which I want for myself, I want for someone else. It's saying it the same way. So I'm cheering you on all the time.
That's not always easy for me. I mean, I think I go unconscious there at times, to be
Yeah.
perfectly frank.
Yes, yes, yes.
Definitely need to work on that one more.
Yeah. And all of these, remember, we're expanded beings. So, and there are infinite possibilities. So there's always an opportunity to expand. That just happens to be your growing edge. My growing edge is I'm working on not interrupting people.
Well, you haven't interrupted me, I don't think, but.
Well, because I'm really consciously working on it. And that's principle 2. So principle 4, be the first to forgive. Now, I have heard people say that there really is nothing to forgive. As human beings, as me being a human being, this is a powerful practice for me. This is a powerful principle for me. When I am walking in the realm of unforgiveness, that means that I'm stuck. Yep. That means that there is a boulder on my path and I can go around it, but I can also go through it. When I go through it, I give a gift to myself. When I go through it, there's an opportunity for expanded awareness. So be the first to forgive. And in the book, I talk about Paul Ferrini's book, where he talks about these axioms of forgiveness, and I'm going to remember them. He says, we begin with ourselves. We forgive ourselves. So there's that whole Hawaiian forgiveness process. And I've augmented it. I forgive me. I'm sorry. Thank you. I love you. So there's a process. So we begin with ourselves. And then the next axiom that Paul Ferrini talks about is that any movement towards forgiveness counts. It counts. It's fine. It's wonderful. There's some people who will say, I can't do it. I'm not ready. Just the idea that you thought that there's somebody that gets to be forgiven, that's a step. Mm-hmm. He also talks about, I want to remember all the axioms. I'm going to open my book because I'm going to remember these.
Can I interject something?
Yes.
For the viewers are going to want to ask this, and it was for me a long time. I didn't understand this. Uh-huh. So, I come from a family of alcoholics, and
mm-hmm.
They've done some pretty terrible things.
Yes.
And some of those things keep rolling forward. It isn't like they're out of my life.
Yes.
So it's challenging. I mean, and how do you navigate that?
And that's one of his axioms. Okay. He says that forgiveness is an ongoing process. And this is what I say. You know that you have forgiven someone when you think about that person and you are holding them in love. Because remember, forgiveness is not a divine quality. Love is. Forgiveness is a human way of moving through stuff. When we have truly forgiven someone, we're loving them. And sometimes it takes a long time. So I have somebody that I was just speaking about. I was with my family and this person's name came up and I was talking about this person and I started to tear up just a little bit. And I thought, I got to do some more work on this because I was still feeling angst. I was still feeling some emotion. It was a lot smaller. It was just a blip compared to what it used to be. So forgiveness is an ongoing process. And until that sting is gone, then you haven't forgiven that person. So people say, I forgive, but I'm not going to forget. And I say, I forgive and I forget. That's the brilliance of it. And the forgiveness work can be so deep, you may not be able to do it in this lifetime. And that's okay. But having the awareness and at least having a process, a practice with it is really very, very important. So yeah. Let me just see if there was something else in here. To authentically forgive, we do so without an attachment to the outcome or an expectation for the other person to reciprocate. So when we forgive, we don't have to do it in front of somebody. We don't have to. That's a wonderful thing about being a metaphysician and being a mystic. We can forgive within our own space. We can do this work on our own. We don't have to, like in the 12-step program, I understand that there's an amends step where people reach out to people to say, forgive me. We don't have to do that as metaphysicians. We get to do our own inner work and just let it go. Because there are people that maybe we want to forgive and they've already transitioned. We can still do that work. That's the beauty of it. Yeah. So that's the fourth principle. Be the first to forgive. I remember someone had written me a really crazy email, and I had to move through the craziness of it, the meanness of it. And I woke up one morning, and that's really where this principle came from. I couldn't wait to get online, to email this person, and to just love her up. It was just an opportunity to love her. And I didn't say, I forgive you. We don't want to do that. I forgive you, because they may not understand what that is. This forgiveness is our process. Because the other piece of this is that there may be an opportunity to forgive, and the person may say, I don't think there's anything to forgive. I haven't hurt you. So, and you haven't hurt me. But maybe I felt as if I needed to forgive someone. The inner work is what's really important in all this. So in my book, there are practices. In my workbook, there are extended practices where people get to really dive deep into all of these principles. The fifth principle is be flexible and open to change. Human beings do not like change. They want things exactly the way that it is. And in this paradigm that we're in right now, where we are experiencing different things, having to stay at home, having to go to the grocery store at a certain time, having to get groceries online, or maybe not being able to get the things that we want. There's all kinds of things that are going on. This is an opportunity to be flexible and open to change, because, aren't you doing a lot of Zoom meetings now? Aren't you communicating with different people in different ways? So there are people who are saying, I'm not doing this. I can't do it. This is too difficult. When we are open, when our hearts are open and available, we see that what we think is difficult, it's not difficult at all. It really isn't.
So I'm hearing be resourceful, which is return to source, right?
Yes. Because source always wants us to be open and available. That's its nature, and therefore it's our nature. Yeah, be flexible and open to change. It's very, very powerful. And when we are flexible and open, there's no telling how our world, how things come into our lives. There's no telling. And then we look, and I love this. I love to look back. Maybe if I had an inch of being inflexible, and then it takes me a couple of breaths to move into this newness that is birthing itself, I look back at myself and I laugh, So this newness that is coming, and that's what comes with being flexible. It's newness that is birthing itself. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful thing.
This is the easiest one for me. I've always been very adventurous, and I
Mhm.
seek out adventure. If I don't have that, I'm not happy. So
Oh, that's lovely.
yeah, this is the easiest one for me
Yes, yes,
so
yes, yes,
far.
yes. So the sixth principle is speak kindly, respectfully, honestly, and openly. That's what we need right now. You know, I didn't know about these Karen videos that were going on until my daughter told me about it. You know, these people that they call Karens that are going off on people, that are bawling people out, that are being unkind and unloving to people. I don't know how that came about. And I've had clients that have said to me, and it's really an honor for them to say this to me, I didn't even associate you with that kind of, person. I mean, it's not me, but they've named that person that way. And it's the reason that I've started this Thursday 9 a.m. just a 5-minute meditation, and it's called Meditate with Karen, so that we can be still, so that we can remember that how wonderful it is to speak kindly, respectfully, honestly, and openly with people. When anything, remember, it goes back to align with the creative power of your word. Anything that goes out comes back to you. So we want to be kind and respectful to people so that that becomes our experience. And there are some people who really need it. The people that are delivering mail, the grocery workers, the doctors, the nurses, the first responders, all those people right now, they need to be kind and loving. They need to receive that. Our neighbors, people that we pass on the street, this is an opportunity. And all this stuff that is going on in the world, when someone is experiencing someone who is kind and loving, it just opens their hearts. My sister was telling me that she was in the grocery store, a grocery store that she frequents a lot. She knows the people that are there, the grocery workers that are there. She said to one of the ladies, she says, "How are you doing?" And the lady was stunned that she asked her. She says, "Nobody has asked me how I'm doing." That's being kind to somebody, to take a few seconds, because that's all it takes, to say, "How are you doing?" And really listen, because the person may not say, "Oh, I'm fine." They may say, "I'm really tired. I'm working these long hours. I'm doing work that I haven't done before. And I'm still having to go home and take care of my family." So there's an opportunity to be kind and loving to people, especially right now.
Wow. Well, I have to say, honestly, I've been looking at some of these government officials and, some of these CEOs like, of Facebook and whatnot, and some of the
Mhm.
decisions they're making.
Yeah.
And I can't, it doesn't come to mind to me to be loving and kind to them, to be quite
Mhm.
honest. I want to
Yes.
yell at them.
Right, 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 right.
And now I'm starting to think maybe you're right. It's the great feminine, right? Because
It
a
is.
woman that
It
would
is.
stand
Yes.
in front of a very masculine male and cry could bring
Mhm.
him to tears.
Yes, absolutely. And those folks need us more than ever. As a practitioner, I call it holding the space. So I may be observing something that's going on like that, and I'm remembering that right where they are is love. Right where they are is power and strength and divine wisdom and divine intelligence. So that's the space that I'm holding for them. So if we all could practice something like that, this world would be a whole different place. And we all get to in our own way. You don't have to be a practitioner. There is an opportunity just in a moment to hold the space. You may not be able to hold it for very long, But just in that moment, you're joining legions of individuals who are doing it. You don't even know that they're doing it, but we're doing it. Makes a difference on this planet. So the seventh principle is live in the yes zone. Yes, I am. I'm the presence. Yes, I can. All things are possible. Yes, I'm available. I'm open. My heart is open. I can do anything. Yes, I am willing to be more and never less. So there's as human beings, there may be a tendency for us to say, no, I'm not going to do that. No, I'm not available. I can't do it. No, no, no. To be open a little bit more, to allow ourselves to be open just a bit more, to say yes to this presence. Because remember, if we know that the presence is individualized in human beings, we get to say yes to that and trust that. So living in the yes zone is about expanding our awareness so that we can live a life that we want to live. And as I'm understanding it right now, yes is about generosity. Someone calls you up and says, I need a favor. Can you bring me over some water? Maybe somebody would say, no, I can't do it. My neighbor, when all this started at the end of March, and people were hoarding toilet paper and tissue and everything, Mary called me up and she says, Karen, do you have a thermometer? I had just bought a thermometer. I gave her my thermometer. I said, Mary, I'll leave it at your front door. And then she said, do you have any tissue? And I had what I, on a human level, as a fact, was my last box of tissues. I said, yeah, I have a box of tissue, gave it to her. That's saying yes. It's not saying, oh my God, I can't give her these tissues. I won't have enough. I may run out. No, we give. And as we give, it's always returned to us in ways that we know not of. So that's why living in the yes zone is so important. And you see that feeling tone? There's no fear. There's no doubt. There's no worry there. There's no hoarding there. It's the generous nature that we are when we live in the yes zone. And then this principle 8, which I love, appreciate and say it out loud. So the example that I gave with my sister and the appreciating the grocery worker, that's an example of it. It's saying wonderful things, kind things to people. Most people are not used to doing that. So someone says something, I bet you do that. You look like, and I feel it, that you are someone who appreciates individuals. And you may say to them how much you appreciate them. And the world opens up.
It's true. It's true.
Yes.
I think hearts are just so aching to be appreciated.
Yes.
And I think maybe it's from being children. We didn't receive it when we were children. So there's like a woundedness there, I think.
Yes. Yes.
But certainly just as being people, but I'm remembering, from my childhood,
yes,
that I was alone. I was left alone a lot, and I did not feel loved.
Yes.
It was really difficult for me for a long time. So being appreciated is a form of love.
It is. Yeah. And one of the things that we get to do is that we get to wrap our arms around ourselves whenever we want to and say to ourselves, Karen, I love you. Karen, you have gifts and talents that you know not of, that the world is waiting for. Karen, you're such a good person. Karen, you do whatever the words are. We get to do that when we feel as though we want it to come from somebody else, because it may not come from anybody else. We can do this 24/7 if we want to just appreciate ourselves and say it out loud so that we can hear it, we can feel it, our body resonates with it. It's a powerful practice.
Yeah, I'm actually thinking like, what if I made an audio tape, of
That's it.
appreciating myself and then just listen
Yes.
to that.
Yes, yes.
How-
Because there are people that are spiraling down because of everything that's going on. And maybe these are people, we're all doing what we can do. And we're doing things that may be outside of our comfort zone. And there may be a time when we don't feel like we're being loved and appreciated enough. So to be able to record that and punch a button and play it back, and so that we can hear it, that's a great practice. That really is. And then what happens is that we remember what we've done and we want to do it some more. So we recalibrate that energy of feeling unloved and not appreciated enough, because that's what it is. I'm sure you've been in different places or involved in different people where they've worked, they've done this, they've done tirelessly. And then they reach a point where they explode. Nobody appreciates me. I've done all this stuff. Nobody has said thank you. That's what this practice is all about. That's what this is all about. Don't stop. Because, as I'm thinking about this now, I remember being in college, doing all this stuff for my sorority and exploding just like that. So this principle was birthed out of that. I've never realized that before. So we're pulling ourselves out of the world. We're no longer relying on the world to tell us how wonderful we are, how appreciated we are, all that good, what wonderful things we've done. We get to say it to ourselves.
This is especially good for people pleasers, right?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes, yes, yes.
That's not so much me. I'm not it's easier for me to say no.
Yeah, and that's great. And the no creates, because that's part of the living in the yes zone. There are times when we have to say no,
Yeah.
because we're creating boundaries for ourselves, because maybe we've done so many things, we can't say yes. We have to say no. So so that's a very good point, Susan. Thank you for that.
Jack Canfield puts it this way. He says, if I say no to you, it's really more of a yes to me.
Yes to me. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And then be generous in giving and being of service. I mean, I think that speaks for itself. Generosity is the nature of God. Therefore, it is our nature. So being generous does not necessarily mean money. It can. Being generous with money, giving and all, making donations and everything. But it's also being generous with our love, with our time, with our joy, with our energy, with our however it is that we're going to do. And I'm just thinking about the practice that I have of going through my closet every once in a while and pulling out things that I no longer use and then donating them someplace. That's an act of generosity. Being of service, we're talking about volunteering. And being of service can mean smiling at somebody when you're walking down the street. Being of service can mean allowing someone to step in front of you in line. Being of service can be, giving to volunteering your time in a particular organization. So being generous and giving and being of service, that's really, that's one of the reasons why I love Agape so much, because it has allowed me to be generous in everything that I do. And because I am generous, it gives me more opportunities to be generous.
I know Tony Robbins talks a lot about, for people who are depressed,
Mm-hmm.
one of the best ways to get out of being focused on your own
Yeah.
sorrow is to give to others who are
Yeah.
maybe in a worse situation or
Mm-hmm.
difficult circumstance themselves. uh,
Yes,
it takes you out of your own victimhood,
it does.
and you're now like at, I don't want to say a higher position, but you're in a position where you're helping someone else,
Yes,
and
yes.
so you're no longer focused on your own misery. So
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
really important thing to do.
Yes. And, there was a minister once who said that we have to give first, as opposed to, he said that most people want to get first and then they'll give.
Mhm.
So to be able to give first and be the beneficiary of whatever that givingness produces is wonderful. Exactly what you're talking about with Tony Robbins. Yeah, too. So when we're generous, when we give first, we open ourselves up to being in a higher realm. So there's something that happens in our body temple where we are lifting ourselves up, we're giving, we're being generous, we're helping someone. I mean, that's really wonderful. Now, Reverend Michael talks about anonymous giving, doing something for, and this is so incredible, doing something for someone anonymously, making a donation anonymously. There's this there's this really funny Curb Your Enthusiasm episode where Ted Danson has made an anonymous donation to this organization, but he's going around telling everybody that he's the anonymous person. That's not being anonymous. When you are anonymous, nobody knows. And the word humility comes up as I'm saying that. So we're humble enough to be able to step back and be in that really high spiritual place of not letting anybody know that you have given. That's the power of the generosity of giving. But most importantly, um, we get to give, and we get to give generously. And then the 10th principle is be in joy now. This is also one of my, I love all of these principles, but be in joy now. There is a practice among so many people that we put off being joy filled, that we put off being happy. Well, I'll be happy when I get a job, when I get the house, when I accomplish this goal. We get to be in joy now. Be in joy now. Why not? And then it has this effect on our body temple. It raises our joy factor. It puts a smile on our face. It does so many things. And then joy, being in joy, is contagious. So when we're in joy, it rubs off on other people, you know? So yeah, so those are the 10 principles. And I love these principles. And, sometimes I'm in forgiveness, sometimes I'm in joy, sometimes I'm practicing everything at once. But certainly to have practices in our lives are really important. That's how we get to live that is a life that is worth living.
Beautiful. And I'm thinking a lot about accountability. And I think
Mm-hmm.
having a practitioner would keep you accountable because,
Yes.
I mean, we could, like you said, the most important thing is that you're practicing these principles.
Mm-hmm.
If you're
Mm-hmm.
not practicing them, you're certainly not going to be getting the results that you're looking for.
Right, right. And these principles are sort of like New Year's resolutions, right? Or at Agape, we talk about setting intentions, so the directions for our lives. Um, so when a lot of people, I do set intentions during the whole year. And then I start living with the intentions that I've set. But the idea is to be able to have someone that you are working with or that you're a friend with. It's like deciding that you're going to walk every day. And when we set, as human beings, when we set these intentions, maybe by March, we're not even practicing them anymore, or even remembering what they are. But to be able to have someone, an accountability partner, a prayer partner, a friend, whatever it is we want to call this person, that where we can talk to somebody who is a vibrational match with us. And what I mean by that is that we want people in our lives who are going to cheer for us, who are not going to say, well, why do you think you can do that? That's impossible. Never heard of anybody doing that. We want to have people in our lives who say, that's great. I'm in full agreement with you. I'll support you with that. Whatever you need me to do to allow that intention to manifest, I'm with you. I know it's possible. So that's another practice, to have people around us who are loving us. They're not jealous. They're not comparing lives. They are people who are on this journey together to rise up. Remember, because we're individualized expressions, we're each on our own journey. We each are. That's why we can't compare our lives. I have no idea what my life was before this particular lifetime. You have no idea what your life was, but we're here. We each have different starting points, and wherever they are, we just have to begin to practice.
Beautiful. Okay, any final thoughts? And how can we get a hold of you? If people want a session with you, or?
Yeah, I have I'd like to tell you about this wonderful community that my publisher and I have begun. It's called the Global Community for Transformation. And you can find us on that web page, Facebook page on our website. On Mondays, we have a broadcast at 9 a.m. where the idea of the global community is to support and love one another in this particular time. So we have conversations, and then we have practices. So we've been talking about some of the things that are going on in the world, and then we talk about what the practice is to pull ourselves out of those things so that we can begin to live the life that we want to live. And it's beyond the 10 practices. And then on Thursdays, we have a 9 a.m. Meditation practice. And we're online for the meditation is just for 5 minutes, because the idea is to do it, to simply meditate. So if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can reach me on my Instagram account, Karen Mills-Alston, and Facebook, same thing. Website, same thing. Okay?
And you're saying that on Facebook you have a page for?
Yes. Global Community for Transformation. That's where we actually broadcast from. We broadcast from that page on Mondays and Thursday, and we also broadcast from my Facebook page on Mondays and Thursdays at 9 a.m.
Okay, beautiful.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts, Karen?
Oh, I'm grateful for you, Susan, and the powerful work that you're doing. We each come here on purpose, are meant to be. And I'm so grateful and thankful that I'm moving into my purpose, that you're moving into your purpose. And I've learned recently that we each have more than one purpose. So this is just where we are right now. And I'm grateful for the work that we are all doing on this earth plane. And this is about, I believe that we're here to be a beneficial presence on the planet. It doesn't have to be a big beneficial presence. It can be to our friends, to our families, to our loved ones. And it may be a global presence. Right now, the important thing for us is to be kind and loving and generous, so that that's the kind of life that we begin to create.
What a beautiful final statement. I'm so grateful for you, Karen, and the work that you're doing. And it's my honor and joy to host you on the show here today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I will be posting links so that people can find you
Wonderful.
And thank you everybody for tuning in. And this is again Susan Blueberry Hill, and we will see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.